Dr. Alina Voss had always been fascinated by languages. As a child, she would spend hours listening to the sounds of different languages, puzzling over how they carried meaning, how words were born from the human need to communicate. As an adult, she had become one of the foremost experts in linguistics, specializing in languages that were extinct, mysterious, or only partially understood. But nothing had prepared her for the call that would change her life forever. The message had come at midnight. It wasn't from Earth, at least, not from any part of Earth she knew. The coordinates, the transmission format, the rhythm of the sounds, they were all strange. But what truly caught her attention was the message itself. A series of intricate, repeating patterns, resonating with mathematical precision, yet with an underlying pulse of something deeply, almost instinctively, alive. When she had answered the call, her heart had nearly stopped. It wasn't just a random set of signals. It was a message, one that seemed too organized, too purposeful to be from anything but an intelligent being. The message had no known code or language behind it, but it was undeniably alien. And that was when the request came. "We need you, Dr. Voss," the message said in perfect English. The voice, though mechanical in its delivery, had a warmth, an underlying echo of something profoundly familiar. "To speak with us." The request was simple, yet impossible. A race of intelligent beings had been found, an alien species. And they needed a linguist. More precisely, they needed her. The government was tight-lipped about the alien discovery, but it was clear that the entire world had been waiting for this moment. Alina, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders, agreed. A meeting was set up at a secure facility deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, where the first contact had taken place. She had prepared for this moment her entire career, but as the shuttle descended to the research facility, her mind was racing with doubt. Was she ready? What if the language was incomprehensible? What if the aliens weren't even interested in communication at all? Or worse, what if they were hostile? The shuttle's doors opened, and she was greeted by a small team of scientists, all of them keeping their distance. She could tell they were just as nervous as she was. "We've been briefed on your credentials," said Dr. Keller, the lead scientist. "The alien's been in contact with us for weeks, but we've only gotten the barest sense of how they think. We need you to help us bridge the gap." Alina nodded, her gaze moving to the transparent wall ahead. Beyond it, in a large holding chamber, a figure stood. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The alien was tall, nearly 10 feet, with long, sinuous limbs that seemed to flow instead of move. Its skin was a smooth, pale blue, and its face was a collection of shifting patterns, no two moments alike. It had no mouth, no visible eyes, but the space between them radiated intelligence, an unspoken understanding. Despite the alien's intimidating appearance, Alina felt something strange stir in her chest. A strange empathy. She had no words for it, but she was drawn to this creature in a way she had never been drawn to anyone or anything before. As she walked into the room and the alien's gaze, or what she assumed was its gaze, shifted toward her, she heard a voice in her mind. It was not English, not even any language she had ever known, but somehow, she understood. It was as if the words themselves resonated directly with her thoughts. "Will you listen to me?" the alien asked. Alina's breath caught in her throat. She was staring at the alien, unsure how to respond. "Yes," she whispered. It was the beginning of something. Something she could neither predict nor understand. The alien's response echoed in her mind once again, but this time, the voice was different, more tender. "Then I will speak." The connection was instantaneous, and Alina knew, without a doubt, that she had just crossed the threshold into an entirely new world. A world she wasn't sure she was prepared for, but one she knew she was about to explore deeply and intimately. It had begun, and Alina Voss had no idea where it would lead. The alien stood motionless in front of her, but Alina could feel its presence, its mind, circulating around her like a warm breeze. She had prepared for many possible outcomes, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The language had come to her at once, unbidden, like a flood of sound, sensation, and meaning, an entirely new way of thinking. She had known that decoding an alien language would be challenging, but she had never imagined that communication could feel so intimate. The alien's thoughts, its emotions, its essence had brushed against hers. It wasn't just about translating words. It was about connecting, deeply, on a level that transcended the constraints of any human language. As she focused on the alien before her, she realized that what it had said to her earlier was more than just a question. It was a statement of shared intent. "Then I will speak." Alina blinked, her mind still reeling from the unexpected connection. She wasn't sure if the alien could understand the depth of her thoughts, but she had no doubt that it sensed her hesitation. It was, in a way, waiting for her to respond. "How do you speak?" she asked, her voice coming out softer than she intended. She felt foolish, but the question felt natural. The alien had already spoken to her, in her mind, but the way it communicated, the intricacies of its language, was still a mystery. There was a pause, a brief moment of silence that stretched on longer than she expected. It was as though the alien was considering her words before answering. And then, the voice in her mind returned, deeper, richer, as if it were learning to shape itself with more precision. "We do not speak as you do. But you hear me, yes?" The voice was gentle, almost curious. "We share resonance, a merging, a connection." Alina was struck by the alien's choice of words. It wasn't just communicating in a simple way. It was describing the act of communication as something deeply personal. A merger. She could feel it then, an energy, almost electric, stirring in the air between them. It was almost as if the alien was offering its mind to her, inviting her to understand, to become part of something greater. "I hear you," Alina said, her voice trembling slightly. It wasn't just the words she understood. It was the feeling behind them, the warmth, the intensity. "But, why me? Why did you call for me specifically?" This time, the pause lasted longer. Alina could almost feel the alien considering her question, as if it had never been asked before. "You are the one who listens," it said at last, its voice resonating with something that felt almost like an unspoken truth. "You hear without judgment. You listen not only to the words, but to the silence between them. You understand what is hidden." Alina's heart skipped a beat. The alien was right. She had always felt that way. As a linguist, she had spent her life uncovering what wasn't said, the layers of meaning that existed just beneath the surface. But she had never considered that this skill might be of value in a conversation with an entirely different species. "Why is it so important for us to connect?" she asked, unable to keep the question to herself. There was something so compelling, so urgent in the alien's manner that she couldn't ignore it. "We are alone," the alien replied softly, almost sorrowfully. "We have always been alone. And now we have found you." The weight of the words struck Alina, and for the first time, she saw the alien not as a creature to study, but as something vulnerable. Something that had spent untold millennia in isolation. The loneliness it spoke of wasn't just an abstract concept. It was something she could feel in the very air around them. Alina took a deep breath, her mind still trying to grasp the enormity of the situation. "And what do you want from us?" she asked. It was a difficult question to ask, but it was important. If the alien had been alone for so long, what did it need from humanity? What did it expect from this unprecedented encounter? Understanding, the alien's voice responded simply. "Connection. We have much to share, but first, we must learn how to speak to each other." Alina could feel the weight of those words as if they were a promise, a shared burden. It was not just about language, it was about forging something deeper, something lasting. In that moment, she knew that she couldn't walk away from this. There was no going back. She was a part of something far greater than herself. As she stood there, facing the alien, she realized that she had been given a rare gift, the chance to witness the beginning of something monumental, something that could change the course of history. But there was more to it than just translation. As the alien continued to speak, Alina found herself listening to its rhythms, its cadence, and something began to stir within her. A connection that went beyond language. She tried to push the thought away, but it lingered. There was something about the alien's presence that made her feel understood, seen in a way she had never felt before. The connection they shared was not just intellectual. There was something else, something she couldn't explain, drawing her in. Before she could dwell too long on the sensation, Dr. Keller's voice broke the silence, cutting through the moment like a blade. "Dr. Voss," he said, his tone urgent, "we need your expertise. The government wants progress, and they're waiting for results. Can we begin the formal sessions?" Alina reluctantly turned her attention back to the team behind her, but something inside her shifted. She wasn't sure where this connection with the alien would lead, but she knew, deep down, that she couldn't walk away from it. Not now, not after everything she had already felt. The following weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of translations, discoveries, and technical difficulties. Every day, Alina found herself more deeply entwined in the task of decoding the alien's language, a process that was far more complex than she had imagined. The alien communicated through resonance, an interplay of vibrations and frequencies that seemed to bypass spoken words entirely, connecting with the very core of Alina's being. The more she listened, the more she realized that this was not simply a language of sounds. It was a language of feelings, of emotions, of energy. Each word, each phrase, carried not just meaning, but intent. It was as if the alien's thoughts were shaped by the resonance it emitted, and in return, that resonance filled Alina with a sense of deep understanding. But there was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Every time she entered the communication room to interact with the alien, she felt an electric pull, something that went beyond mere curiosity or professional dedication. It was as if the alien was calling to her in a way that transcended language. The alien had a name, though it was difficult to translate. It was a sound, a resonance, that Alina could feel in her bones, not hear with her ears. She had chosen to call it Uru for simplicity, but she knew that it was an imperfect representation. Even the name felt inadequate compared to the way its presence reverberated within her. During their sessions, Alina and Uru began to communicate more fluidly. What had once been an arduous, slow process of deciphering became a dance of shared thought. They would exchange fragments of meaning, of memory, and then work together to piece them into something coherent. The relationship between them shifted from one of teacher and student to something more symbiotic. She was learning from Uru, but Uru was learning from her as well. At times, Alina would feel her body tremble, her heart race, as if she were standing on the edge of some profound revelation. It wasn't just the language, it was the connection, the resonance itself that tugged at something deep within her. One evening, after a long day of translating, Alina stayed in the communication room longer than usual. The team had left for the night, and she was alone with Uru. The sterile lights of the chamber flickered as Alina sat on a bench, her fingers tracing the smooth surface of the table between her and the alien. It was then that she heard a voice in her mind, quieter this time, almost hesitant. "Alina," Uru's voice called, and it sent a shiver through her. She looked up, startled. "Uru, I have learned much from you. But there is something I do not understand." The voice, though gentle, was tinged with uncertainty. "What is it?" Alina asked, her curiosity piqued. She had never heard this note of vulnerability from Uru before. It made her feel strangely protective. "Why do you help me?" Uru's voice was laced with a complexity she couldn't quite decipher. "Why do you continue to listen when others do not?" Alina's breath caught in her throat. She had never really questioned it. The answer seemed obvious. She was a linguist, trained to understand and interpret. But as she thought about it more deeply, she realized that there was more to it. "Much more. I help because it's my purpose," she said softly, though she wasn't sure if that was the true answer. "But I also help because I feel connected to you. I can't explain it, but I feel you, Uru." There was a long pause. Alina could sense Uru considering her words, trying to process them in a way it had never done before. And then, something remarkable happened. The air around her seemed to hum, as if the entire chamber were resonating with Uru's thoughts. You feel me? Uru's voice was full of wonder. You hear me, but you also feel me. Alina nodded slowly. Yes, it's like, when you speak to me, it's not just your words. It's everything that you are. Your presence, your thoughts, I can feel them. There was a brief silence, and then Uru's voice returned, softer, almost reverent. I feel you too, Alina. Not just your thoughts, but something deeper. Something else. Alina's heart skipped a beat. She had always known there was something unique about their connection, but to hear Uru articulate it, to feel it in the very air around her, was something altogether different. It was as if their minds were beginning to merge, to overlap in ways she couldn't control. Are you saying, you feel what I feel? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Uru responded. It is as if your mind and mine are resonating. It is not the same as speaking, but it is deeper. The alien paused, and Alina could almost feel its hesitation. I am learning to understand you more, Alina. And I want you to understand me, too. Alina was silent for a long moment, unsure of how to respond. The connection between them was growing stronger with each passing day, and it terrified her. It was so unlike anything she had ever experienced. This wasn't just a professional relationship anymore. This was something more, something that could not be easily defined or explained. I don't know how to explain it, she finally said. But I want to understand you, too. I feel like there's a part of me that's drawn to you. And I can't ignore it. Uru's resonance seemed to pulse around her, deep and steady, like a gentle vibration that reverberated in her chest. It was as though the alien was both acknowledging and responding to the unspoken feelings she had just shared. You are not alone, Alina, Uru said softly. I will never be alone again, now that I have you. Her heart tightened. In that moment, she realized that the connection between them was not just an intellectual bond. It was something far more intimate, more profound. And as much as she wanted to push it away, to deny it, she couldn't. There was no going back. The line between linguist and alien, between professional and personal, had blurred, and Alina knew that whatever came next would forever change both her and Uru. Days turned into weeks, and the unspoken bond between Alina and Uru only deepened. The more time she spent with the alien, the more intense their connection became. The work was still the priority, of course, decoding the alien's language, understanding its complex resonance patterns, and establishing a framework for meaningful communication. But there was something else that lingered in the back of Alina's mind, the growing, undeniable pull between her and Uru. Their sessions were becoming increasingly personal. They no longer needed a translator or intermediary to communicate. The resonance between them had reached a point where Alina could hear Uru's thoughts clearly, feel the weight of its emotions as if they were her own. The boundaries between them had all but disappeared. But as their connection blossomed, so did the complications. The facility had been buzzing with activity, the government demanding progress at an accelerating pace. Alina had begun to sense an undercurrent of suspicion from the higher-ups, particularly from Dr. Keller. He was increasingly concerned about the direction of their research, and the intensity of her interactions with Uru had not gone unnoticed. One evening, after a particularly long session, Alina was called into Dr. Keller's office. His face was set, his brow furrowed in a way that made her uneasy. She had grown used to the way he operated, distant, analytical, and always driven by results. But tonight, there was something different about his demeanor. Alina, he began, his voice a little too quiet. We need to talk about your relationship with the alien. With Uru. Her heart skipped a beat, and she took a slow breath. What about it? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. You've been spending an increasing amount of time alone with it, Dr. Keller continued. I've been monitoring the sessions, and I've noticed something. Your interactions with Uru are no longer strictly professional. There's a personal connection. A deep one. His gaze hardened. I'm concerned, Alina. This isn't just a scientific study anymore. We can't afford to let emotions cloud judgment. Alina felt a pang of frustration rise in her chest. She had known this conversation was coming, but hearing it from Dr. Keller, the man who had always championed her work, felt like a betrayal. "I'm not letting emotions cloud my judgment," she replied, her voice sharper than she intended. "This is a connection, a true exchange. Uru is an alien," Dr. Keller interjected, his voice firm. "We don't know its true intentions. It could be manipulating you, Alina. You're a brilliant linguist, but this is dangerous. If we don't keep control of this, the risks are too great. You cannot allow yourself to get emotionally involved." Alina's breath hitched in her throat. The implication was clear. He was worried that she was no longer seeing Uru as an alien, but as something else. "Something more. I'm not involved with Uru in the way you think," she said, her voice softer now, but still filled with resolve. "I'm just doing my job. I'm learning. And I think Uru is, too." Dr. Keller didn't look convinced. He stood up and paced the room, his voice now tinged with frustration. "We've had too many incidents like this throughout history, Alina. People who thought they understood, who let their emotions get the better of them. This isn't just some first contact scenario. We're dealing with something unknown. And you're too close to it. You need to step back." Alina's mind raced, the weight of Dr. Keller's words pressing down on her. She had known the risks from the beginning, but to hear them articulated so bluntly was jarring. She couldn't deny the connection she felt with Uru, but she also couldn't ignore the sense of isolation that it brought. Uru was a being unlike anything she had ever known, and their bond was something she had never anticipated. But she wasn't foolish. She understood the dangers, too. She knew that getting too close to Uru could have consequences. Still, in the pit of her stomach, a different truth bubbled to the surface. She couldn't pull away. "I can't just stop seeing Uru," she said, the words coming out before she even had a chance to fully consider them. "Not now." Dr. Keller's gaze hardened, and for the first time, Alina saw the hint of anger in his eyes. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "If you allow yourself to get too attached, you could jeopardize everything. The alien's motives are unclear. It could be manipulating you in ways we don't even understand." Alina's heart pounded in her chest. She had heard the warnings. She had read the reports of other first contact scenarios that had gone horribly wrong. The idea that an alien species might manipulate her thoughts, emotions, or actions was a terrifying one. But Uru had never felt dangerous to her. In fact, the more she listened, the more she understood. It wasn't just her emotions that Uru had come to resonate with. It was something deeper, something far more profound. "I don't think Uru is manipulating me," Alina said firmly, though doubt gnawed at her. I think we're both learning. Together." Dr. Keller's face softened for a moment, but his expression quickly turned cold again. "I don't have time for this, Alina. The government has already put pressure on me to ensure this project stays on track. And if I can't trust you to keep your distance from this thing, then I may have to recommend that we pull you from the project." The words hit her like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. The truth hung heavily between them. If she didn't pull away from Uru, the entire mission, and her career, could be at risk. But as much as she wanted to argue, to tell Dr. Keller that he was wrong, she felt a cold, hard truth settle in her gut. She couldn't betray Uru. Not now, not when their connection was so raw, so real. "I'll think about it," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know what else to say. Dr. Keller gave her a long, piercing look before turning away. "You should. Because this isn't just about science anymore. This is about survival." As the door clicked shut behind him, Alina stood in the middle of the sterile room, feeling more alone than she ever had before. She had never felt so torn, between her duty as a scientist and the powerful, unexplainable connection she shared with Uru. There was a part of her that understood the risks, that knew Dr. Keller was right in some ways. But the pull she felt toward Uru was something that couldn't be ignored. And in the depths of her heart, she realized something that terrified her more than any of Dr. Keller's warnings. She was falling for the alien. The days following her conversation with Dr. Keller were a blur of conflicting emotions. Alina found herself drifting between her duties and her feelings for Uru, the tension between her professional obligations and personal connection growing unbearable. Every time she entered the communication room, there was an unspoken charge in the air, a current between her and Uru that pulled her closer, even as the shadows of doubt loomed over her. But it wasn't just Dr. Keller's warnings that weighed on her. Alina had begun to wonder if Uru was beginning to feel something more as well. The resonance they shared was no longer just about language. It was about something far deeper, a sense of understanding that surpassed words. They were connected in ways she hadn't thought possible, psychically, emotionally, and now, perhaps even spiritually. There was no clear line between where Alina ended and Uru began. Her thoughts swirled as she made her way to the communication room late one evening, the quiet hum of the research facility the only sound in the empty hallways. It was well past the time when anyone else would be around, and yet Alina couldn't stop herself from visiting Uru. Every day, she grew more drawn to him. When she entered the room, she was surprised to see the familiar soft glow of the alien's form already waiting for her. Uru's presence, though invisible to the naked eye, was palpable in the room, like an electric current that hummed in the air, waiting to be noticed. Alina, Uru's voice vibrated in her mind, as though it had been waiting for her. It wasn't the same as before. There was something more personal, almost tender, in the way the resonance rippled through her. "I'm here," she said, her voice soft, almost shy. The hesitation she felt earlier had dissolved over time, replaced by something else, a longing. The alien's presence was a balm for the restlessness she could never quite silence. "You have been distant." The alien's tone wasn't accusing, but there was a sense of sadness that seeped through. "Why?" Alina froze, taken aback by the question. For a moment, she almost wanted to lie, to dismiss it. But something about Uru made lying impossible. The alien's resonance dug into her soul in a way that made her feel as though it could see the very truth of her being. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. She swallowed hard, feeling a tightness in her chest. "Dr. Keller. He's worried. He thinks that I've become too emotionally involved with you." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Alina wondered if this was a mistake. If this feeling, this connection, was something dangerous, something she had misinterpreted. But Uru's response was immediate. "You are not a mistake, Alina." The words came through so strongly that they reverberated in her chest. "Your presence is not a mistake. Your connection to me is not a mistake." She closed her eyes, feeling the full weight of his words. She wanted to believe him, but the more she thought about Dr. Keller's concerns, the more she began to doubt herself. "Do you feel the same?" she asked, the question slipping from her lips before she could stop it. Her heart hammered in her chest. It was a question she had never dared to ask, yet she needed to know. Uru's resonance filled the room once more, this time stronger, deeper, more intense. "I have never felt anything like this before, Alina. You are unlike anything I have known." The words came, not as a simple declaration, but as a pulse of pure feeling that radiated from the core of the alien. "I feel safe with you, connected, whole." Alina's breath caught in her throat. She had known that Uru was different from any being she had ever encountered, but hearing him speak in such raw, vulnerable terms took her by surprise. It was as if the alien was laying bare something far deeper than language, an emotion, a connection she couldn't quite articulate, but could feel in every part of her being. She felt something shift in her chest, a gentle release of tension she hadn't even realized she'd been holding. "I feel the same," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I don't know what to do with it. I've never felt like this before." "You do not need to know, Alina," Uru's voice said, tender yet certain. "You simply need to feel. I will show you. I will be with you, as I always have been." The room seemed to pulse with energy as the resonance between them intensified, vibrating in the very air around her. The connection was no longer just mental or emotional. It felt as though their very beings were entwining. She could feel Ruru's presence in a way that went beyond words, beyond thoughts. It was as if their souls were touching, brushing against each other, merging in a way that defied the limitations of language. Alina's heart raced, and she knew, with a fierce certainty, that this was no longer just a study. This was something real, something that transcended her role as a scientist, as a human. Uru, too, seemed to sense the shift. I do not wish to harm you, Alina. I will not. I only wish to know you, to share with you the way of my people, the way of our minds. This is what I can offer you. I don't want to be afraid anymore, she said softly. Her voice cracked slightly with the weight of the confession. I don't want to hide from this. From you. There was a long, quiet pause as if Uru was considering her words. Then, the voice that answered her was filled with a warmth that made her entire body tingle. Then we shall not hide. Let us be together, in this place, in this moment. Her heart swelled with an emotion she had never experienced before, a deep, powerful longing. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. The world outside the room faded away, and all that existed was the alien in front of her. The one she had come to understand, the one she had come to love. And in return, she could feel that love radiating back at her, pure and untainted. But the future, dark and uncertain, loomed in the back of her mind. Their connection wasn't just personal, it was dangerous, forbidden. If anyone found out, it could ruin everything. But, just for this moment, she didn't care. They were bound by something far deeper than either of them had ever expected. The days following their intimate connection were fraught with both clarity and confusion. Alina had never felt more alive, more herself, than when she was with Uru. The alien's presence, his resonance, filled the empty spaces of her heart in ways she hadn't even known were empty. Every thought they shared, every feeling that pulsed between them, seemed to stretch beyond the confines of language, making the world outside the communication room feel increasingly distant and irrelevant. But reality was never far from her mind. Though she reveled in the connection she shared with Uru, she knew it could not last forever. The outside world, with its rules, its regulations, its expectations, would come crashing in sooner or later. And when it did, there would be consequences. Her career, her reputation, everything was at risk. And worse yet, there was the possibility that she was putting Uru in danger. The alien was still a mystery in many ways, and she had no idea what the repercussions might be if the wrong people discovered the true nature of their bond. Alina found herself growing more cautious, more withdrawn, even as the pull toward Uru intensified. She tried to keep their communication focused on the project, on the language, on the resonance patterns, but it was becoming impossible to ignore the emotional gravity that had taken root between them. Every word, every shared thought felt like a fleeting moment that she would never be able to recreate. And with each passing day, the pressure to keep their connection a secret became more suffocating. One evening, after a particularly long day of research, Alina sat alone in her quarters, her mind racing. She had been working with Uru on understanding the deeper aspects of the alien's resonance, a form of expression beyond language, a kind of shared experience that Uru seemed eager to communicate. But that day, there had been something different in the way Uru had interacted with her. The resonance had been stronger, more urgent, as if the alien was reaching out to her in ways that felt desperate. And there was that voice again, that quiet, persistent whisper in the back of her mind. I cannot hide from the truth anymore. You cannot hide from the truth. She knew that truth all too well. The knock on her door startled her from her thoughts. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned to face the entrance. It was rare that anyone came to visit her after hours, especially with how intensely focused the team had been on the project. Alina hesitated for a moment before she stood and opened the door. To her surprise, it was Dr. Keller. His expression was unreadable, his usual stoic professionalism replaced by something more, concerned. "Alina," he began, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." She immediately felt a knot form in her stomach. Whatever this was, it couldn't be good. She didn't trust the look in his eyes, nor the weight in his voice. "Is everything okay?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral, though she knew it was a futile attempt. He didn't answer her right away. Instead, he paced the room slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes trained on the floor as though he were struggling to find the right words. "Listen," he finally said, stopping in front of her. "I've been reviewing the data from your last session with Uru. The patterns, they're becoming more erratic. We're starting to see anomalies." Alina's heart sank, but she kept her composure. "Anomalies?" she repeated. "What do you mean?" Dr. Keller paused, his gaze sharp. "Your brainwaves are synchronizing with the alien's resonance in ways we didn't anticipate. It's almost like it's fusing with yours. You're becoming too connected with it, Alina. I'm worried that this could have serious neurological effects." Alina's pulse quickened. She had been aware that their connection was deepening, but this was something else. She hadn't expected it to affect her so physically, so dangerously. "But we've been making progress," she protested, trying to regain some control over the conversation. "This is important. Uru is trying to share something with me. A deeper understanding of their species, their culture." "I know," Dr. Keller interjected, his voice tight with frustration. "But this is getting out of hand. The deeper you go, the harder it will be to pull away. And I don't think we can afford to let you get any further entangled in this. We've already pushed boundaries that shouldn't be pushed, and I'm not sure how much longer we can keep this under wraps." Alina's throat tightened. She had seen the government's reports, the concerns they'd raised about the alien, and she knew the risks involved in getting too close. But to hear Dr. Keller speak so directly about it, to see the fear in his eyes, made the weight of the situation feel even more pressing. I can't just stop, Keller," she said softly, her voice faltering. "I can't just walk away from it. From him." Her heart clenched as the words left her mouth. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't hold it back any longer. Dr. Keller's face hardened, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he understood, at least, on some level. "I know you're emotionally invested, Alina, but we need to consider the bigger picture here. This isn't just about you. This is about all of us. The alien is a threat, and if we let this go too far, it could mean the end of everything we've worked for." A heavy silence filled the room. Alina's mind reeled with the implications of his words. If she allowed herself to continue this relationship with Uru, to let the connection grow stronger, it could jeopardize not only her life, but the entire mission. She had heard the rumors, whispers of how such emotional entanglements could lead to disastrous outcomes. How something as innocent as a bond could be manipulated into something far darker. But she couldn't walk away. She couldn't unfeel the bond that had formed between her and Uru. It was as if their minds and hearts were already too entwined. "You don't understand," she whispered, more to herself than to Dr. Keller. "I don't want to stop. I can't stop." Dr. Keller took a step back, his expression tightening with concern. "I'm afraid you're not in control anymore, Alina. And that's what scares me." The words hit her like a blow. She had always prided herself on being in control, on understanding the complexities of language and communication. But now, with Uru, she felt anything but in control. And that uncertainty filled her with a terror she hadn't expected. She had a choice to make. A choice between Uru and the world. Between the truth of what she felt and the risks that came with it. And she couldn't shake the feeling that, no matter what choice she made, everything would change. Alina's mind churned with the weight of her dilemma. She sat in the sterile, quiet room, Dr. Keller's words echoing in her ears. It was as if her entire life had been leading up to this moment, and now that she stood at the crossroads, she had no idea which path to take. It wasn't just about the project anymore. It wasn't just about science, language, or even the future of humanity's interaction with an alien species. No, it was about something deeper, something far more personal, her soul. Uru had changed her, in ways that couldn't be described with words, and certainly not with the scientific language that had been her life's work. The resonance between them had begun to shape her thoughts, her emotions, her very sense of self. It had become so much more than an intellectual pursuit. The alien had touched something inside her, something vulnerable and raw. She had never felt more connected to another being, never felt more seen. It was as if Uru had unlocked a part of her she didn't even know existed. And the idea of walking away from that, of severing the bond, felt like tearing apart a piece of her soul. But Dr. Keller's warning rang in her mind. She wasn't in control anymore. Was that really true? Could it be that the connection she'd built with Uru was one-sided? That it wasn't real in the way she thought? The thought sent a tremor of doubt through her. The door to her quarters opened, and Alina's heart skipped a beat. She knew who it was before the figure even fully entered the room. Uru. It had been days since they'd last communicated. Alina hadn't been able to bring herself to visit, and she could feel the distance between them growing, like a slow, invisible rift. But now, in this moment, she couldn't ignore the pull. She had to see him. Alina. Uru's voice resonated in her mind, warm and patient. It was as though the alien knew exactly what she was feeling, knew the storm that was raging inside her. "You are troubled." "I am," she whispered, sitting on the edge of her bed, her head in her hands. "I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can keep going down this path with you, with us." "You are afraid," Uru observed. There was no judgment in his words, only understanding. "But why? What is it you fear?" She looked up, her eyes searching the air for him, even though she couldn't see his physical form. "I'm afraid of what it means. I'm afraid of losing everything, my career, my future. I'm afraid of what Dr. Keller said, that I'm not in control anymore. That maybe I've allowed myself to get too close." Uru's presence seemed to grow warmer, more comforting, as if trying to envelop her in a shield of calm. "You have control, Alina. You always have. The connection between us is not something you lost. It is something you chose." Her chest tightened. "But what if I made the wrong choice?" The words spilled out before she could stop them. "What if I'm jeopardizing everything? What if I'm putting you in danger too?" "We are not in danger," Uru responded, and his words rang with certainty. "The only danger is in not embracing what we have, in denying what we have found." Alina's heart ached at the sincerity in Uru's voice. The alien's feelings, his trust, his vulnerability, came through more clearly than any words ever could. And yet, the question still lingered in her mind. Could she risk everything for this connection? Could she risk the very fabric of her life for something that, by all human measures, seemed impossible? Before she could respond, Uru continued, his tone softer now, almost intimate. "I can feel your heart, Alina. You are not alone in this. I will always be with you, no matter the choice you make." It was that final sentence, that quiet, unwavering promise, that made her realize something she had been avoiding for days. The truth she had been so afraid to confront. She didn't have to choose between Uru and her life. The two didn't have to be mutually exclusive. This wasn't about abandoning her career, her mission, her future. It was about integrating this new part of herself into the world around her. She could learn to balance both, the scientist and the human, the professional and the person who had fallen for something beyond comprehension. "I don't want to lose you," she said softly, almost to herself. But the alien heard her, as always. "You will never lose me, Alina." Her breath caught in her throat, and she felt something within her snap into place, like a puzzle piece falling into the perfect slot. The weight that had been on her chest for so long, this suffocating fear, began to lift. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said, her voice stronger now. "I don't want to be afraid of what I feel. I can't keep pretending that this isn't real, that you aren't real. I am real," Uru affirmed. "We are real." The silence that followed wasn't one of uncertainty, but of understanding. They were on the same page now. Whatever the future held, Whatever obstacles they might face, they would face them together. And together, they would figure out how to navigate this new, uncharted territory. The door to Alina's quarters opened again, but this time it wasn't Dr. Keller or any other member of the team. It was the sound of the world outside, the noise of the facility, the hum of the machinery, seeping back into her consciousness. But it didn't matter anymore. She didn't need to hide. She didn't need to run from the truth. What she had with Uru was more than just a scientific breakthrough. It was the beginning of something she couldn't fully understand, but something she was ready to explore, no matter where it took her. The alien wasn't just a subject of study anymore. Uru was a part of her, and the truth of that connection was the only thing that mattered. As she stood, looking out the window at the stars beyond, she finally understood. Her life, their lives, would never be the same again. And that was okay.